We are in the season of Lent, and during the season of Lent, we're going to look at a series of 5 parables that Jesus told. So last week, Carol got us started with the parable of the wedding feast. Today, we're going to go on with the parable, sometimes called the parable of the laborers of the vineyard. Remember, when we talk about a parable, it's a very special kind of story. It's not necessarily an illustration designed to make things more clear. Oftentimes that's the way we use stories as an example to make a point and do that. Parables have a whole different purpose. We talked about this about a month ago when we heard a parable. The point of a parable is to throw us off balance, to challenge conventional thinking. It usually has some kind of exaggeration, some kind of unexpected twist that makes us say, well, that's not right. It forces us to think in a more creative, in a different way, to reorient what we thought that we had figured out. All right? If it doesn't do those things, it's probably not a parable, it's just a story. All right? So parables are designed to unsettle and have a surprise, a twist, make us think in a new way. Many of Jesus' parables, he would begin like this. He'd simply say, the kingdom of heaven is like, and then he would go on and tell the story. Remember, when he talks about the kingdom of heaven, he's not talking about heaven, all right? So it's a way that he uses to talk about God's presence here on earth. That's the kingdom of heaven, is God's presence here, where God is active, not someday, somewhere, but here and now. So let's listen to the story. The kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire laborers for his vineyard. After agreeing with the laborers for the usual daily wage, he sent them out into his vineyard. When he went out about 9 o'clock, he saw others standing idle in the marketplace. He said to them, "You also go to the vineyard. I'll pay you whatever is right." So they went. He went out again about noon and about 3 o'clock and did the same. And about 5 o'clock, he went out and he found others standing around. He said to them, "Why are you standing here idle all day?" They said, "Because no one has hired us." He said to them, "You also go to the vineyard." When evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his manager, "Now call the laborers, give them their pay, beginning with the last and going to the first." When those who were hired about 5 o'clock came, each of them received the usual daily wage. Now, when the first came, they thought they would receive more, but each of them also received the usual daily wage. And when they received it, they grumbled against the landowner, saying, "These last worked only for 1 hour. You've made them equal to us. We've borne the burden of the day, the scorching heat." But he replied to one of them, "Friend, I'm doing you no wrong. Did you not agree with me for the usual daily wage? Take what belongs to you and go. I choose to give to the last the same as I give to you. Am I not allowed to do what I choose with what belongs to me? Or are you envious because I am generous?" So the last will be first, the first will be last. All right, so whether you like or dislike this parable probably is determined on who you relate to in the story, right? If you relate to the ones who came and just worked the very last hour, you think, this is the greatest story ever, right? If you relate to those who worked all day long, this story just rubs you wrong, all right? It's just not right. So what does this mean? It's a parable, right? So we knew it was going to have a twist at the end designed to mess with us a little bit. It's not a platform for economic policy. It's about the kingdom of heaven, about how God is at work in the here and now. If things are fair, you get what you deserve, right? Grace, on the other hand, by very definition, is undeserved love, not getting what you deserve. Fair, get what you deserve. Grace, you get much more than you deserve. Under the accounting system of religion, good is rewarded, bad is punished. It's not very complicated, right? And much of the Old Testament is sort of set up that way for us. Good is rewarded, bad is punished. You don't have trouble until you try to figure out, well, how good do I have to be, or how bad can I be and still get rewarded, right? So Jesus dares to suggest the kingdom of heaven might not be about accounting, but might be more about grace. But what would a grace-shaped life look like? I want us to think for a minute about the parable about those who only worked for an hour. Why were they not picked in the first place? You guys ever pick up teams, go out in the sand lot, you're getting ready to play a game, and you line up and you get two captains and you choose teams? You guys know how that works, right? The captain gets to they take turns going back and forth choosing. Who gets picked first? Well, you pick your friends first, right? Or you pick your whoever's biggest or strongest or fastest, the most skilled at what you want to do. That's who gets picked first. Who's left for the very last? It's the weakest one, smallest one, the one least able to contribute. They're the last ones picked. For the day laborers in Jesus' parable, it was the same way. Only the thing is, if you didn't work, you didn't eat, right? Getting chosen became survival for your family. So the last ones picked would be the old or the infirm, the injured, the sick, the handicapped, the outcasts. Those were those who seemed to be of less value, of less worth. But the landowner sees their value not in what they can do for him. Their value is simply in who they are. The landowner knows everybody needs to eat. Now, those who worked all day long would have been fine with their pay. It was fair. It was decent. It was better than decent pay, right? It was what was expected from a day's work. They didn't get upset at all about it until they saw the generosity of the landowner, right? In their words, he said, he made these others equal to us. Those who were chosen last, equal to them. They were outraged. Now, maybe grace won't work in a business world, at least not. Capitalists insist that you need reward or punishment to motivate behavior, which is true if material gain is your highest value. But Jesus holds out that the kingdom of God is not built on some ideological premise, right? It just won't make sense to those who want to earn their reward or find their worth in what they do. But an experience of grace can transform, motivate people in ways that reward and punishment just can't. Now, is it possible for someone who to take an experience of grace for granted? I mean, of course. There's days I don't even think about the miracle that my heart keeps beating, or that my mind works, or that my body moves when I want it to, or that my sins are forgiven. And I find my spending energy complaining about things not going exactly the way that I wanted them to be, right? But when I remember that all that I am is a gift, that every moment is sacred, then I can find joy in expressing my gratitude. It's not about what I have to do, it's about what I get to do. There's a freedom that comes when we're not always looking over our shoulder, wondering whether I've been good enough or not, or when we're able to do the right thing simply because it's the right thing to do. When we hear stories of people who make sacrifices for the sake of others, it's not because they were looking for some kind of reward or recognition, right? It's because they cared about someone. They loved someone. It's what you do when you love someone. It's what God did in sending Jesus. It's what those who would follow Jesus do in their daily lives. Well, next week we will get another messed up parable about the kingdom of God and what it is like. So we'll come back and get another one of those as well. But for now, let's sing a song. Get Joan back up here. Song about the harvest, about the laborers, for the fruit of all creation. It's hymn number 679.